Untitled Chapter podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 19th episode. Sorry, let's try that again. 19th. Okay. I did it. Hello and welcome to the 19th episode of the Powder Keg podcast.
The show that lathers up all over your hands to wash away the bacteria of tilt.
Nice. So, first thing I want to talk about this week is actually an interesting quote that was listed from Faker on the front page. We do a lot of discussion in our pre-show, obviously.
On Faker quotes.
On Faker quotes, yeah. And this week in particular, it kind of... I felt it was a little bit typical of the discussion that's been going down on the front page about Faker. So we talked last week about something he said, which was basically, was it Madlife? Who said that Faker could predict when he was going to kill someone. And now the front page is basically Faker said, I don't think I'm worthy of the pay or the love of the fans I'm receiving, so I need to work harder. Now, that's great. I'm glad that Faker is a humble fellow. But I do feel like Faker has this certain persona where whatever he says, as long as he says something, it's like...
From Faker Reddit.
Faker said it.
Podcasts start talking about it. From page the
big
newspapers.
Podcast. No, but I do understand that. I do think that's a nice thing to say. But I do think every pro player says that every day, on social media and stuff. Like guys, I really appreciate all the support I'm getting. It's literally what it's just said is I think I can work harder. I think I can be better. I appreciate all the support. It's okay.
4,000 upvotes.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't know. I just feel like his persona is so he's Korean. He doesn't speak English. But he said that he appreciates the fan support. I feel like it's this is a bit overblown for what it is. It's
kind of a bit of a basic PR statement that people kind of look into.
Yeah,
people love PR statements. That's why PR exists. But it's kind of, we do like our Faker quotes on the show, but usually it's I can never improve because I am the super demon evil killer god. Because you're really good League of Legends. It's just a bit more humble than the usual, I guess. So I guess it stands out.
Yeah, but it's just when he says something before last week, we mentioned the fact that he said that he can see when there's an opportunity to kill someone. It's I'd say every pro player that's happened to them. Say every player it's happened. It's say every pro player. So I appreciate all of the support I get from fans. I think I can work harder for it. Yeah, but it's Faker, so it's so popular. I mean, I don't know. Again, he's a popular personality.
Yeah, and he's cool because he's kind of an interesting character, because if you're trying to think about an attribute of Faker's personality, it's kind of difficult to place it down. Obviously, a big part of this is the fact that he doesn't speak English, so we haven't seen any language in interviews or anything with him in the language that we know him that he can speak. But I mean, we attribute things to sort of who knew have a similar. He doesn't really speak English either.
Yeah.
But Faker's kind of this kind of blank template that we know that he's really good at League of Legends, but is he funny? I don't know. I heard some stories that might be a bit goofy. Is he very serious? Sometimes he might be a bit serious. Is he really angry? Maybe some kind of be a bit. He's kind of a bit of everything. Faker's just kind of homogenous. Maybe Faker is all of us. Maybe Faker is what we all aspire to be. Does Faker actually exist, or is he just this perfect League of Legends creation? This kind of Mewtwo that we all kind of, if we can be that, that's the perfection. But does Faker really exist, or is he all of our aspirations?
It's interesting. No, but it is interesting that whenever he does demonstrate some aspect of personality, whether it be a bit of humbleness,
yeah,
a bit of humility.
There we go.
A bit of humility, or a bit of goofiness. Everyone's Faker. I can identify with that emotion. Therefore, I love Faker. For the most part, he is kind of fairly when you see him playing, he's blank face, stone cold killer. A fair amount, he does have this kind of I'm very serious. I'm Faker. I don't use skins in the game because I embody the purity into it is this real kind of attitude of I am greater than just this simple video game. I mean, he's a professional League of Legends player. But when he does the vain tumble at Worlds, everyone's Faker's so goofy, and he has a little smile on. It's Faker's so goofy. And then when he he trash talks, he's I'm the best player to have ever existed. It's Faker, he's so arrogant, he's so but he can be because he's so good. Or when he's humble or whatever, it's Faker's so humble. So I feel like he's just a pretty average individual.
It's people just pick up the scraps of personality that he can.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's not like a sociopath or anything. He's not the Sherlock Holmes of friggin' League of Legends. I think he's a pretty normal guy. He's just very good at League of Legends. So
it's like we're a tabloid, and it's like trying to find out whether Jennifer Aniston is pregnant or not. So like any tiny picture or any kind of hint we can get that Jennifer Aniston is pregnant, we're like, oh, Jennifer Aniston's pregnant, guys, this time for real. She's never actually pregnant. Maybe Faker, as I said, doesn't actually have a personality, but maybe occasionally he says something that might lead people to think that he's some sort of particularly exceptional personality, and so we all grab at that. But maybe the only thing exceptional about Faker is exceptional League of Legends mentality and ability. Other news is
that's kind of... Maybe he's a terror. Maybe he's not even a person.
I literally already said maybe he's not a person. So last show actually came out, like, I'm embarrassed saying what time we're recording, just whenever this actually comes out. But last show we only got released yesterday, recording this morning. Again, editing issues. Sorry guys, we're getting used to the whole video thing. We'll make things quicker. Hopefully our pre-show will become, more topical because we'll be able to release sooner after.
Yeah.
But that'll come as we get more used to video and stuff. Sorry about that. But other stuff that's been happening, the 10 ban system is now, the competitive split has started. And with it has started the 10 ban system. And it's actually been great. Like, it's been really cool. We had been dissing 10 bans a lot.
I think, again, we were talking about it more in relation to solo queue, which I do think is kind of, it's going to be a goofy, like every time there's whatever, 6 bans or whatever. Wait, how many
10.
bans? There's currently 6 bans.
Yes,
yeah.
There will be 10.
So when there's 6 bans, it's like, God, 4 of those champions are just people like banning silly champions. So now there's even more opportunity for goofiness. I mean, I don't think it's going to make that much difference for the most part. It's going to be frustrating for people who want to play champions that have like bad reputations like Yasuo and stuff. But definitely in competitive play, I think it's a really good. It's been like,
so cool.
I feel like
like not only the first thing it does is that it's really increased champion diversity. So I had the stat there on my phone, but my OneNote wasn't updating, so I couldn't get my pre-show notes. But I think it was 42 unique champions played over the first 2 days.
I think it was 42, yeah.
42. Like, it was so cool. It was like Jax versus Camille top lane. Singe has gotten loads of play now. Is playing. And what they were saying I was watching an ALCS last night, and they were saying kind of, you've got the S tier champions, which is Rengar, Camille, and Blanc. They get banned every game. Although they didn't get banned in the the Phoenix won against whoever the hell it was. But they get banned every game, S tier. And then you've got kind of the tier below that, which is, there's kind of a tier below that where there's like 1 or 2 champions per role. And there's a tier below that, and they said that's pretty much every other champion in the game. Yeah. Like, you can kind of just pick, there's a huge variety of things then, and you often get to that tier because you've got so many bans, and because, so it just increases this variety a huge amount, which just makes pro play so much more interesting, because the big kind of issue I've almost always had with pro play is that if you're watching over a month's time or something, during that meta, you really aren't going to see a huge variety of champions. Usually it's 1 or 2 per role. And so, sure, there's variety in strategy and implementation, but the actual variety in what you're watching often can be limited. You don't get to see fun champions that you like to see and stuff like that. So it's really cool now. It's also increased loads of strategic kind of pick ban system. So it's like, I cannot wrap my head around new pick ban. Like, how do you strategize around this? Because you pick like a couple champions, and then you ban, you pick, and then you ban again. So it's like...
Wait, what? There's picking between banning?
Yeah. That's how it works. So you ban 3 champions. And then each team, I don't actually know specifically, but each team picks either 2 or 3. And then you ban again 3 more champions. And then you pick again. And so basically what teams have been doing is kind of like, you can ban kind of the big ones, the big heavy hitter S tiers. And then like you pick AD carry. If they don't pick their AD carry, you can then ban 3 ADs. And then they have to pick like a C tier AD. So if you can get Ashe, then you can ban like Varus, Ezreal, like Caitlyn or something.
Specifically on that, I do think that's actually, because I wasn't actually aware of that, and so I was thinking that, because there's this idea that, because when I was hearing that increasing the bans to 10 was increasing the diversity, I was kind of like, oh, that's really cool. Then I was kind of taking a step back, and I was like, but I also don't know if it will, because there is a tendency for people to say that, reducing or removing the powerful champions in a game will then bring about more diversity, which I think is kind of like a misnomer, because I think if there are 10 bans, right, what people are going to do for the most part is they're going to ban the 10 best champions in the game, and then they're going to then pick the next best 10 champions in the game, 5 on each team sort of thing, and I do think it's almost impossible for there to be a completely flat power level. I don't think the way tiers work or the way power levels work in the game are most powerful, next most powerful, everything else is equal. I think it's kind of comps will evolve out of this next kind of field that will then be the next tier. And I think the way a tier system works is it's difficult to have a completely flat line of power, and that very often the way team comps work are you have to have certain champions, so there will develop another tier. And so what I was kind of thinking was, well, what's happening is they're just going to ban the 10 best champions, and then there's going to be the next champions, and those are the ones that are going to be contested, and occasionally people will avoid banning maybe the most powerful champions in order to ban kind of champions that people start playing more in the next level of tier. And so I do actually think that's a really interesting point, is the fact that people are going to ban based around what other teams are picking. Yeah. I think that's really cool. The only way that you can just power ban like loads of AD carries or something and have that pick advantage. So I definitely do quite like that.
The reason why it's so cool as well, the reason why that isn't necessarily the case, kind of what you're saying, is that people just pick the next 10 bets, is that kind of the tiering system works kind of like a pyramid. So you've got the few best at the top, but then as you go down tiers, kind of more champions enter into the equation. Yeah. So that's what's happened. You see like Zyra would be the big support, but then people kind of start picking Malzahar in Korea. That's come in as well. But then it's like people start picking Lulu as well. I haven't seen Lulu support in a while. But obviously people picking MF into it, support as well. So that would be the classic one. But if people ban MF, people ban something else, and someone picks Lulu. So you just kind of see these interesting things like that, and that leads to more experimentation, leads to more counter picks coming out. You end up also you almost see more powerful picks more often, kind of because, I don't know why, but like you've seen Katarina pop up. She's another one that should be kind of banned a lot. But just a lot of stuff gets through because there's a lot of other stuff to ban. Yeah. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting because people have been complaining a lot about the current meta. Like Cutie Pie and Scara on Beyond the Rift were basically saying that they might just treat this split as a write-off. They're saying kind of the split's just because the meta is such a mess, kind of ADs are so bad. But supports are essentially doing a hell of a lot more damage than ADs, all that sort of stuff. They're kind of saying the top lane's kind of just hyper tanks killing everyone. The game is pretty imbalanced right now. But I was watching NALCS last night. It was actually really fun to watch. It was really enjoyable. And that's with this kind of, I agree with them, it's a real dodgy meta. So it bodes really well for the Gen ban system and what it can kind of pose for competitive in the future. As we said, in your games, like it's just going to mean if you play a champion that's pretty good, like in the meta, and people don't like it, you're not going to
I do think my whole idea of the fact that it's going to be kind of, there will then be better champions in solo queue sort of thing. I do think it's going to be more just like, in solo queue it's going to be just like more just kind of more random in terms of what champions you get and what champions you don't get. I don't hate it in terms of that, like, you can ask your teammates to ban, I personally ban champions that I find really annoying to play against rather than champions that have a high rate. That might be the smartest thing to do, but I ban champions like Zac, champions like Trundle, so I just find them so obnoxious to play against. So now at least there's more likelihood that I can get people to ban them, which is nice. But I don't think it's going to have a huge effect on like general like play and play style. Like, I don't think it's going to be like, oh, we're not going to start advocating, oh, you need to now pick up an extra 2 champions into your champion pool. You need to do this. Like, it's still going to be very much like, so the chances, if you play 4 champions, if you play 3 champions, the chances that all of them are going to get banned is going to be like sub-zero unless you play Yasuo, Zed, and
I feel so bad for any like Zed one tricks out there. Zed can be there, he can be at 45% win rate, but if there are 10 bans, Zed is going to get that ban a lot of the time because people just don't like AD champions for some reason. It's actually in the LCS. Another reason I'm very optimistic about the LCS is that TSM lost last night in their first game to Cloud9.
What's team? The TSM roster is now.
They just Doublelift for Wild Turtle.
Yeah. How did Wild Turtle play?
Yeah. They have now equaled their losses from the last split. When they lost.
Who did they lose to?
Cloud9 2-0. And Cloud9 have this new rookie jungler Contracts. Is a 17-year-old guy. Just now eligible to play in LCS because he's now turned 17. He had been playing for Cloud9's Challenger team, and so he kind of been playing with them. So he's pretty hyped up. He came in and he played super well on Lee Sin, kind of outplayed Sven in a lot of ways. So that's really exciting
Sven
to see.
Sven is a good jungler as well.
Yeah, and also he's American, so producing their own talent. Yeah, but like the thing is like,
Eagle.
Like the most represented country in EU right now in the ELCS is South Korea. So,
in the NALCS, you mean?
In EU, no, switching over to EU. But just the idea of people actually producing their own talent. Getting this guy up through the ranks, he was real hyped up, so it's cool to see him playing well. Hopefully, I much prefer. I don't like TSM very much. Sorry to all our TSM fan listeners.
I like TSM.
I don't.
I like members of TSM.
I like
Bjergsen. I mean, Bjergsen is just. I mean, I don't think anyone doesn't like Bjergsen. I mean, he's just like real nice guy.
Yeah, it's just quality. I like
just
Bjergsen.
really good player. You can't really hate on Bjergsen.
But, there was a real cool thing happened in EU LCS as well. I don't know if you saw it, but it was Fnatic against G2, and the G2 jungler Trick was playing Rek'Sai, and he was going towards the Fnatic jungler,
saw the thread,
and he was walking into it, and then all of a sudden he's dead. And it's because Fnatic had 3 members standing perfectly still. And because he's Rek'Sai, he sees all these people who moves. So as he's going in, he doesn't realize, he thinks, like, there's no one here. But they were all waiting for him there, and they all turn and kill him as he walks straight into them. It was so cool. I was like, how has no one ever done this with Rek'Sai before? I'm pretty sure Riot probably mentioned this in the champion spotlight as a way to deal with them. But it's really hard
people
to
do it. It's like you just wait in a bush. But the problem is Rek'Sai, he builds like full tank and
you
stuff.
don't even have to be in a bush.
Yeah,
Because he can't see you anyway.
Yeah.
So if he's tunneling through, they're literally just waiting there for him. So it's such a cool play, and it worked for them. They got the kill out of it. Unfortunately, Fnatic didn't win the game. G2 won the series. But that was super, super cool play. You're playing against Rek'Sai. Keep that in mind if you ever pull
Just
that off.
don't move. Sit in
It's
your
like a
fountain.
T-Rexai. Yeah, you can only see you if you move.
Yeah.
Do
You smell your fear.
you have any other news to?
I don't think too much else happened this week. Again, just to bring back again the fact that we're going to try to keep the podcast coming out more often as possible. Again, we recorded last week, bang on Friday. Today is Saturday, so not quite bang on last week, but we're going to try to keep it weekly. So even if this does come out in a few days, like we released the last pod yesterday, so we're going to try to keep it as frequent. We're going to try to record it on a weekly basis on the weekend probably, and so bring it out in a couple of days. So it mightn't be exactly bang on 7 days apart, but we're definitely going to try to keep a consistent uploading.
There was one thing I kind of wanted to mention, which is, it's not a particularly topical thing. You know, if you're a streamer, okay? Imagine what you have to make it. And you're a streamer, okay? You have to start out and all these really low viewers. You have to be streaming all the time. These really low viewers, like you get your first person to comment on your chat. And you're like, oh, cool, person's commenting on my chat. Oh, cool. You get a couple of subscribers. Like, oh, Daddy, these guys are subscribing to me. You know, I feel so grateful for all these people. You know, it's used to get 100 viewers regularly. Like, oh, maybe you get a couple of subscribers. Like, these people are subscribing to me. Like, they're giving me this money on a regular. This person is opting to give me money because I'm playing video games and watching me. That's so cool. And pretty much I say almost every streamer has probably been through this kind of mode, apart from the pros who kind of started really high.
Yeah.
But they get massive then. Imagine you get massive then. You're getting donations regularly, you're getting things regularly. They're probably still super, super, super grateful to all these people that are opting just to give them money, right? Imagine someone just like handing you money, like how grateful you'd be. But they're getting so many and they're trying to play the game, they're trying to stream for these people. So all they can do is say, hey, thanks man, welcome to Big Dick Club, yeah, all that sort of stuff. They have to kind of say this generic formulaic message every time they get it. So they kind of adopt this formula, welcome to Bird's Nest, like Frog. They all have their own thing that they say. And it kind of comes out that they end up sounding
insincere.
Kind of insincere because they're saying the same thing every time. And I don't know how much it would affect how streamers actually think of this. I always find it weird because I was thinking if I was in that position, I'd be so great. Like someone's like, giving me that money, it's like, if I'm going to give them money, I want to be like, I just gave you money. But it's like, but like they're forced because, you know, they have to run the stream. That's what they're getting paid for doing. They have to kind of produce fun content, produce good quality. They can't spend all this time just like, you know, like
thanking people and
gratuitously, like, you know, just like, I don't know, like falling at the feet of anyone who offers to give them $250 a month. But I find it an interesting thing because it does end up coming across a little insincere.
I do think that's actually interesting, yeah, because I was actually watching, I don't know, it randomly popped up on my YouTube, like, it was just like on my up next, and they just like randomly queue something that suggested, and it was like top 20 Twitch donations of all time or something, and I was just like alt tab and just started playing, and I kind of flicked onto it, and was just like, oh, I wonder what they are. So I just like flicked through them real quick, and I think it's interesting, like, how do you react if someone donates you €20,000 or $20,000? Like, it's literally impossible to express like gratitude in a way that will like equal that. Like you can't be thankful, like you can't do something or be like thankful enough or genuine enough on camera. It's impossible for everyone to be like, oh, like he appreciates that, because it's something that you can't really do because it's too much. Like it's impossible to react to. And so you see streamers when they get donated even like €100 or something or $100, and it's like, and they're like, oh wow, that's like so much. Like thank you so much. And it's like they can't do anything else. It's impossible to express that. And that's basically what like donations and subscribers are on Twitch. They're basically people just giving them money for free. And it's like impossible to truly express your thanks in a way that will be, I don't know, like acceptable, or that will be like, that is truly enough for that, because you can't do that. You can only say thank you. And so yeah, people come up with these like repetitive things that are ways for them to kind of say thank you in an entertaining way, or just say thank you in a way that and everyone knows that this is what they always do, so they don't have to always come up with something new or always be like stressing about it. And I do think certainly streamers are very thankful for it. And I do for some streamers, especially streamers who have kind of, let's say, gone directly from pro play. I think it does become normalized. It just becomes just like, I am going to get a donation every 30 seconds. Let's say for I'm a cutie pie or something, I think he's less like inside, he's less like, thank God, I got the 1,000th donation today. I think it's more like, more expected. And I think he would maybe notice it more if he just didn't get a donation for like an entire day or something. I think it's more just like, yeah, funny. Oh, I don't want to read that. Oh, that's silly, yeah. But I do think for a lot of streamers, the vast majority of streamers, it's like both an impossibility that you can truly express like thanks to the extent that it would be like worthy of that money, because basically they're just giving you money. And I do think it's also like a matter of finding a way to say thank you without, detracting from the stream or without.
There is one way to look at it, and I think it's a pretty fair way to look at it, and it's that these people are working. Often this will be their full-time job for someone like I'm a cutie pie or currently like Doublelift. And so when you're working as a full-time job and you're producing content for a large variety of people, sure, their payment may be voluntary, but it's also like when I work for my minimum wage in O'Brien's, I don't fall to the floor thanking
on my
so
payday
much this gracious company for paying me my €9.15 an hour. I don't do that because I expect to be paid because I'm working. And so maybe it's a little condescending for me to say that these people should be so grateful that they're getting paid. Sure, what they're being paid is voluntary. It's by fans. It's not by some big corporation. But at the end of the day, they are working. They're putting in the time. They're putting in the effort. They're trying to make good content. They're trying to produce good stuff. And they don't expect to do it for free because it's their job. So maybe on one level, it would be a little bit condescending to kind of say that these people should be so grateful. But I still think the fact that it is voluntary means there's some aspect of that, particularly when they're smaller, particularly when they're growing. But maybe when you're on the level of QPI, maybe when you're that big, it's perfectly fair to expect to get regular donations, to expect to get regular subscribers, because that's your income. That's, what you're building your life on. He's not going to college, he's not building himself up some long-term career, apart from maybe in video games, which is, I guess, a perfectly legitimate long-term career. But, this is their job. Often it could be very short-term. Like, what if there's not much job security. What if someone accuses you of being a cook?
I think a lot of like being donated.
You lose all your viewers. You're nothing now. Like, what are you going to do? So get all the money you can.
I think being donated the first time as well. It's kind of like wow, like I actually someone actually thinks that I'm worth it. And I think it's almost like also, as well as being like wow, thank you so much for actually giving money. It's also like wow, someone actually like maybe this could happen. Maybe I could make it. It's the equivalent of someone giving you a call back for a job or something, or saying, hey, maybe we do want to give you this job. So you're basically being told by someone that they think that you are kind of worthy to work, to stream full time, or to make content full time, or to make videos or do whatever you're doing. So this kind of voluntary contribution is a way for them to self, what's it called? It's like where you verify self-validate themselves, because they're like, I am worth it. Yeah, I can do it. You're worth it. Like the Fring L'Oreals. But yeah, so I do think it's definitely an interesting question.
It's an interesting topic, I think.
Definitely free. Because I do think there are people who talk about I think everything should be open source. I think every game should be free and people should only contribute what they want to it. I do think it's like an interesting kind of question, both like ethically and also just like in terms of like how something like that would work,
or why someone wants it to be that way.
Yeah. Also, but yeah. Anyway, so I think we should probably move on to our main topic today. So our main topic today is going to be positioning as a carry in team fights. So we've done a bit of positioning before. We've done a bit of kind of team fights. We haven't really done positioning actually. We've done like things to do in team fights, having a game plan in team fights. I think positioning's come up a bit, but we just wanted to kind of focus on that topic for this week. Just to get it nailed down for everyone who.
So firstly, what we mean by carry, we're not really including guys like assassins. We're not really including divers. Sure, when you play Diana mid lane, you probably consider yourself one of the AP carries of your team, but that's not really. We're talking more about kind of squishy champions, so either like a mage mid lane usually, or a AD carry would be the big one. And how you want to position a team fight, you're squishy. You want to do as much damage over the course of a team fight. You are the main source, or one of the main sources of your team's damage. Your team is relying on you to survive in a team fight and do as much damage as possible. So it's a consistent damage dealer in a fight. So someone who's going to be consistently dealing damage for the duration of the fight, not just using a rotation of skills and then
being useless for the rest of the fight.
And not a tank, not a diver, not a...
Yeah. Like Mundo might do consistent damage, but he's not a carry for our definition, for our use of the term anyway. So we're going to be focusing on AD carries, AP carries mid lane, and by AD carries I mean like Victor, Azir, all these like big champions who are going to consistently be doing damage.
Yeah. So and there's a few things about it. I think it's worth talking firstly about kind of how important this topic is, how important a skill this is to develop. So basically, when people talk about mechanics for AD carry. When people, I don't know, there's a Doublelift clip a few years back when he just did this insane kiting play. I don't know if he got a pentacle at the time, but he did this crazy kiting play in LCS, or maybe it was Worlds. Anyway.
It was LCS, I think. Or was it Worlds?
I think it might have been LCS. LCS playoffs or something. But, and there was like, Doublelift, the mechanics. And that's what people think when they see mechanics. They think Doublelift, like kiting back on
They think the ability to click fast sort of is mechanics.
But I think probably most important mechanic for an AD carry player, maybe slightly less so for kind of a lot of AP carries, I think for an AD carry, is the ability to position in team fights. Is kind of this half cerebral, half fully mechanical thing. It's all about thinking quickly and about implementing your thoughts quickly.
Yeah.
About moving your champion quickly, repositioning, understanding the dynamic nature of positioning in team fights. And when you when you think of mechanics, you think, I want to be able to dodge this stuff. Sure, dodging is part of it. But positioning is really about being constantly moving, constantly looking at different abilities that's going on.
Yeah, and specifically on that, like the idea that like positioning is like the ability to move your champion quickly. I think positioning is almost the ability to identify when you should move your champion quickly, and then the ability to move your champion quickly is something that very transitions. That like his insane kiting isn't just, he's not just like clicking really fast. It's not something he does every fight. It's his ability to identify what he needs to kite to an extent, and then to actually kite that. Like, so often you'll see, like, again, these LCS clips or whatever, where it's like, oh, like mad mechanics, like what a player. And like what they've done is, the reason why they're able to do that is because they're able to identify all these things they need to stay away from, all these things they need to go in. They're able to identify their ranges, the opposing team's ranges, and do all of this. And this is all something that, because often enough when I hear like positioning, people kind of think about like this thing you do at the start of a team fight. Like you position, and then the team fight starts, and then boom, everyone jumps into a big circle, and it's just like fists coming out of ball of smoke sort of thing.
And you're on the outside of it, just like ding, shooting in your little pistol.
Yeah,
like,
and then you're shooting into it because you've found the right position. You found your hill, from which you're just throwing your bombs at them.
Grassy knoll.
No. But positioning is a constant thing. I think that's something that very often people will disregard, is that you continually have to position throughout a team fight. And I mean, I do that myself as well, where you're like, even I, the great Plat 3 player.
Plat 3?
Well, I'm currently
Plat 3. We have to keep maintaining this as a Diamond 5 podcast.
Well,
we haven't played much
my
ranked this
MMR is
season.
like Diamond 5. But, because, I haven't played that much since the start of the season. But so, it's a continuous thing, and you need to constantly be identified. Like if you're like at the start of the team fight, I need to be behind my tanks. Like, we're going to go through here why you need to be behind your tanks. We're going to go through why you don't need to be behind your tanks. We're going to go through here what you need to be avoiding from their team, what you need to be constantly moving. And you have to constantly be doing this for the duration of the fight. I think that's so often something that people will be like, oh no, you position and then you use mechanics. Like, you use your mechanics to maintain a certain position in relation to everyone else, because positioning isn't something that's just fundamental, that is just, this position is the best position. Position is something that's completely relative to 5 enemy champions and 4 allied champions, and it has to constantly be evolving and adapting as a fight progresses. And that's what we're going to be discussing.
And that's why it's hard. It's fluid, it's dynamic, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
So the first thing you're going to be thinking of, and this is one of your kind of prepping as the team fight begins, you're going to be taking into account in how you position, is your own champion. And we're going to be talking a lot about zones. I think, Owen, you're probably best capable of explaining,
as always,
zone theory.
Let's be honest. So yeah, so the idea of zones is kind of...
Zone theory? The idea of zone theory. Sorry, continue.
The idea of zones in zone theory,
Zone theory.
in any game is kind of the idea that, like, an extent, I think most people have a general idea of kind of zones are. So let's say if you think about your zone is an area in which you can deal damage to the enemy champions, right? You can deal damage to anyone. So champions have different zones for their different abilities. So let's say for an AD carry, your most important zone is generally going to be the zone in which you can auto-attack the enemy champion, right? So your
auto-attack range.
Yeah, your auto-attack range. Think about it like a green circle in which you can deal damage to the opposing champion.
And obviously there's much more to it than just auto-attacks, because if you think of the zone, let's say you're playing Varus, your zone where you can do damage could be your Q range, and that's really far. Your ult range is really far. You got your Jinx, you got your W range, you got your Jhin, you've got your ability to root people with your W, or Jhin with your ult. It's like this huge range. So this Jhin zone, which is why he's so powerful, is absolutely massive because he can engage fights from so far away from ulting. So it's about knowing these different things, but obviously the most important thing as an AD carry would be your auto attack range. But you think you're in Anivia, all of a sudden it could be maybe how far can you throw your Q, how far can you do your wall into Q, or it could be your ult E, which you can use to almost one-shot an AD carry. Or you can think of something like Lux, really long range. Lux can hit your Q from so far away. She can ult from a million miles away. And it's not necessarily just how far away kind of your longest range one is it? Because you've got kind of different zones.
Yeah, so as Andrew already said, different champions. So again, Jin's W is a far longer range than his auto attack. His ult is a far longer range than him dropping his E or his Q or anything. So every champion has these different zones, and it's really identifying in a team fight how these zones are going and at what point you can kind of let an enemy champion enter, let's say, one zone, enter another zone, how you want to maintain this difference, this distance from them in order to deal damage. And I think that actually leads quite nicely onto this whole idea that was a huge kind of real kind of messy fiesta in League of Legends, which was the whole concept of what was it? Auto-spacing. And so auto-spacing was a big old meme created by Medios and Sneaky when Doublelift basically mentioned that Piglet was a very good AD carry in lane because he was very good at auto-spacing. And the whole concept of auto-spacing is basically that you're constantly keeping the opposing champion at the very edge of this zone, of your auto-attack zone, of your auto-attack range. So basically what Piglet was doing in lane was he would go right to the edge, he would bring them right to the edge of the zone, just so he could auto-attack them, then he would move away. So if they were in equal range to them, they could never get in an auto-attack because he was only entering it just as his auto-attack animation was about to go off, and then he was backing off. And so this is a perfect example of him using that knowledge of that zone to deal maximum damage to the opposing champion while taking as little damage as possible. And it's a really good example of why it's important. And it is really important. And it's a real simple idea. And I don't understand why everyone was just like Sneaky and Medius were like,
Beavis and Butthead on it.
You need a butthole. Auto-spacing. The auto-spacing was too good. And it's like I understand that they were annoyed or whatever. They thought it was stupid. But like, it's generally a pretty, maybe him attaching that label to it they thought was annoying because they already knew about it. Maybe that's it. But it turned into a huge meme when it's like a pretty simple idea. And I actually think auto-spacing is a pretty good word for it. Pretty good label for it. And it's a fairly simple idea and hugely important as an AD carry. Hugely important.
I think Medius and Sneaky were just fucking around on stream.
Yeah.
And then someone recorded it on
idea.
Twitch, uploaded it to YouTube, uploaded it to Reddit at a time. I think Doublelift probably just lost a game. So everyone was in kind of Doublelift make fun of mode.
Yeah. But they did use it for like weeks afterwards.
They kind of jumped on the bandwagon.
Everyone did. It was
I don't think they were annoyed though. I think they were just having the crack.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
But it's an important thing, particularly as an AD carry, and that's kind of in lane they were talking. But zones are going to be used probably as much or more in team fights then.
Yeah. And again, you'll see just to kind of like, you'll see really high elo AD carries and stuff. You'll see like as a fight is kind of starting and stuff, like their character is kind of like, it's like stuttering. It's almost like they have like a script on when it's like, it's constantly moving back and forward because they're trying to get the opposing team into their zone right on the edge. And they don't want to go any closer because obviously we're going to talk about other zones shortly because they don't want to open themselves up to other players' zones. But yeah, it's very much just kind of like identifying, like again, Gangplank's a good example. Gangplank has a global zone, for instance. His ultimate is anywhere he wants. But that's not like he doesn't really need to be thinking about like, I could have it here, or I could have it here. Like he doesn't really need to be identifying all the different places that zone extends to because it extends the entire map. But his barrels again are a very different zone. His Q is a different zone to that, and his auto attacks are a different zone to that. So every melee champion has multiple different zones they need to be aware of, and need to be aware of where they want to keep the enemy champion in relation to those zones. So Gangplank, for the most part, in team fights, wants to keep the opposing champion maybe just at Q range, maybe just out of Q range, so he can kind of set up nice boxes. Again, his barrels. His barrels have a much longer zone than the rest of his abilities because he can chain them very nicely. And so it's often deceptively, his range is deceptively short for a new Gangplank player because they'll be like, my barrel range is only this far. The range of my Q, that's not very far. Because what he can do is he can angle himself to place barrels right on the very edge of his zone, and then they'll deal more damage to the opposing champions. And that's all about positioning.
Yeah, and this all sounds kind of theoretical, but we're just starting off basically. This is kind of just the start, and we'll be continuing to talk about what's more important almost is kind of the other champions in the game and their zones and like interacting with them. But firstly, it is important to know your own ones because as a Gangplank, you need to know, well, if they get within melee range of me, sure, I'm really vulnerable, but I'm a champion that builds 6 crit items, and I've got a passive that gives me all this bonus AD true damage, and I've got a Q that crits as well. So you just say, sure, you're Gangplank, you're dangerous when they come that close, but you've got all this damage as well. So you know if they get a win within that zone of you, sure, you're vulnerable, but they're also vulnerable because you do a hell of a lot of damage in that zone. So when you're playing against a Gangplank, you're a champion without that much health. It's like, well, a Gangplank zone is very far, but if I can get up close to him, then I can do a lot of damage. Well, he can also absolutely kill you.
But again, mostly I was talking about it from the perspective of a Gangplank player. You don't want them to be on top of you as Gangplank. I mean, you can of course do things if they are. You have ways to cleanse. You have ways to peel off with your passive movement speed and stuff, and your barrel explosions. And your ultimate again gives you movement speed if you have the upgrade, and it slows them. There are ways you can do that, but for the most part, it's all about identifying the zones that you want to keep them in, the distance you want to keep opposing players at. And again, this will translate into kind of good kiting. It'll translate into kind of the enemy team being frustrated because they never quite get near to you. I mean, you'll see good Caitlyn's. Let's say Caitlyn versus Vayne. Like, if Vayne is right beside Caitlyn, Vayne is going to win that because she does more damage with her ultimate pop, with her W passive, with her Q damage. She's going to win that fight. And you see that sometimes where bad Caitlyn's will kind of win lane versus Vayne, and then the Vayne will just pop ultimate and still kill Caitlyn. But the Caitlyn is strong because her zone is longer than the Vayne. And you see really good Caitlyn's just like auto-attack the Vayne, auto-attack, step away, auto-attack the Vayne, auto-attack, and then the Vayne tumbles into range, and the Caitlyn again uses her E, which is a perfect tool for maintaining that zone differential. And then she'll use that, and the Vayne will never even get an auto-attack off because the Caitlyn will just constantly be keeping her at this max range. And that really does translate into good mechanics and flashy plays, to be honest.
So aside from zones, there's other things to keep in mind about your champion when you're going to team fight, how you're going to position your summoner spells. Like, what do you have up? If you've no flash, and let's say you're playing Rise and you've no flash, okay, you're not going to be walking forward to their carries to try to use your abilities on them because you're just going to get absolutely slaughtered. That's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. What about kind of how strong you are? Sure, like, maybe you're still a Rise, but maybe you're 10 and 2 or something. Yeah. You still don't want to walk forward because you're really strong. You don't want to lose all those kills walking to their team. But you know if their tank tries to dive you, you're just going to absolutely melt them. Yeah. Things like that, your strength's going to affect. Or if you're really, really weak, I don't know, maybe you want to be a bit more aggressive almost because you want to protect like your more fed members. Or maybe almost if you're really strong, you want to kind of survive for longer. So you want to be a bit more careful. When you're a bit weak, maybe you're a bit more willing to sacrifice yourself for the team. Yeah,
and again, similarly to summoner spells, cooldowns and stuff are also very important, such as like movement abilities. Because again, maintaining these specific distances are very important, and movement abilities are really a really good way to maintain these distances. Just like I said with Caitlyn E, with Vayne Q, real good kiting tools, really good ways of keeping the opposing enemy's champions at the specific distance to which you can constantly deal damage, or at least you can prevent them from dealing damage to you. And I think at that point, is there anything else to mention with your champion, or can we move on to...
Well, with the movement abilities, it's important to consider kind of like, just get an idea of what that really means. If you imagine playing Ezreal versus playing Jinx, and kind of how you need to play on each one. And so, sure, you're going to teamfight as Ezreal, you're much shorter range than Jinx, but you can afford to kind of get in the thick of things more, because you know you have that ability to fly out of the fight at any point.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're Jinx, you need to be super, super, super careful about staying as far back as possible and utilizing the range you have. So that's another thing to consider. Like, if Ezreal didn't have his E, then you'd be a very different champion indeed.
Bad champion.
He'd be a very bad champion. And you'd have to position very differently on him, as in you'd position him not in your champion pool. Wow, okay. So, enemy champions?
Enemy champions. So again, we've already talked about just there, the zone that your champion has, right? And the fact that you want to keep them within specific zones and specific ranges in relation to your champion in order to, maintain consistent DPS. But why do you also want to keep them at those things? So it's also because you don't want to enter their zones of damage as well. And so this is the classic, again, Caitlyn versus Vayne. Vayne has a specific zone, which is her auto-attack range. Caitlyn has a specific zone, which is her auto-attack range. The fact is, Caitlyn's zone is longer than Vayne's, so Vayne can be within Caitlyn's auto-attack range, while Caitlyn is not within Vayne's auto-attack range. So that's the classic example of two zones and how they interact. So in a team fight, just as you have to be aware of your champion zones and your champion's ability to deal damage at different distances, so too do you need to be aware of the opposing champion's zones. And this could be a zone of CC, this could be a zone of damage, this could be a zone of anything. So again, like Malphite is a classic example of something you really need to be aware of in a team fight, because Malphite has a specific range, and that range, if you think about all these zones as in like big circles around enemy champions, and I'm not talking about like Gangplank ultimate or something, because there's no real point in thinking about that as a real big circle, because you just need to be aware that Gangplank ultimate could pop down anytime. So if you think about like Malphite as in, he has a red ring around himself in a team fight, and this is the distance at which his ultimate can fly out and hit you. So as an AD carry, you don't want to be within that zone. Pretty straightforward. There's an occasion where maybe you have flash up and you're 100% sure you can flash that ultimate, and maybe you can, and that does factor into this whole kind of summoner spells and how important they are going to a team fight. But for the most part, you want to be aware of the different zones and aware of the dangers they have, and you want to be adapting your zone relatively. So let's say, this is a really good example of it. So you're Jhin, and Jhin has one zone which is auto attack range. And as an AD carry, often Jhin does want to be auto attacking in a team fight. But let's say they have 3 assassins, Kha'Zix, Zed, and Katarina. Now, as Jhin, you do not want to be walking up to Zed and Katarina, and unfortunately, their movement abilities are similar, if not longer range, than your auto attack range. So now, this is the strength of Jhin, and often enough you'll see in solo queue Jhins that will be like, what, they're diving me, where's my peel in my team fight? So this is an example of a Jhin that's not respecting the zones of the enemy champions. It's not respecting the Zed W into ult, it's not respecting the Katarina flash E, it's not respecting the Talon, or whatever, dash, and so he's walking up too far. And that too far mightn't be like into the actual range of Zed ult. It might be into the actual range of Zed W ult. It might be just the range of Zed flash W ult. And again, you have to identify their summoners as well. But so at this point, Jhin can abuse his longer zone because he understands that I can't enter their zone. I just can't because I'll die instantly. So what I have to do then is I have to abuse my even longer zone, which is my W and my ultimate, and I just have to use that range to still consistently deal DPS while not dying to their zones. And so it's a very relative thing. You have to constantly be aware of the interchanging zones as the team fight's progressing, and when maybe that zone that was once red is now nice and green because the Malphite has already used his ultimate, and now you can walk up to him and stuff like that.
You're going to feel pretty damn useless because you're playing Jhin, again, in this situation.
In that situation.
You're playing Jhin against 3 assassins. So
unfortunately, carry, yeah.
Unfortunately, you're going to have to feel useless. You're going to have to stay that far back. As chances are, you've got a few bruises in your team. Those assassins won't be that effective. So really, you have to stay that far back. You have to use your ultimate as far away as possible. You have to use your W's as far away as possible. Either that, or maybe, according to the circumstances of the game, maybe kind of sacrificing yourself will be worth it. Usually, it's about playing smart. It's about playing safe, staying that far back, and using that range. Because in that kind of unique situation, there's so many assassins. You need to stay that far back.
Yeah.
As yet, you mentioned summoners, which is an important thing to consider.
Just as it is with your champion, it's also important to consider with the opposing player's champion.
The classic would be an Annie. Whenever you're in lane against an Annie and you're low and she's got her stun up and you're just like, oh, she's level 6, does she have flash or not? Because, Annie flash. Tibbers is the classic.
She always has flash.
She always has flash.
But yeah, that's like
it's an important thing to consider as far as the zone.
Because flash, again, the range is, I don't know, it's like 500 units or something. I'm not entirely sure. But so if you think about it, like every kind of game-changing, whatever, big CC ability or big ability that they have is essentially extended by 500 units by that flash being up. So Malphite ult that at one point was this big is now this big. And so you need to just being like, oh, I didn't know he had flash. Like you need to think, I don't know if he has flash, so therefore I have to respect that increased zone of damage and that increased zone of CC, and I have to play around that. And so that's why these zones are, and this is why positioning is not like a thing you think about at the start of a team fight and then you just move on. You're not like, okay, I'm positioned well behind my carries, now it's fine. What happens if your carries are on top of them and Malphite still is ultimate and you walk up with your carries and then get blown up? This is all like, again, we're going to talk more about your allied champions and how they affect zones, but specifically just about kind of the understanding that you need to constantly be thinking about this. You need to constantly be thinking about their zones, how your zone affects them, and that's why, let's say, that's how an understanding of that will manifest itself in really cool plays like, let's say, Doublelift kiting. Because what he's done there is he said, I need to maintain this distance from them. And the fact that he's done that so well through kiting and through mechanics and through using his movement abilities and his knockback and his ultimate and his mobility and his flash and his heal, those are all ways that he's managed to maintain a maximum distance. Because if he hadn't done that and he hadn't identified the different abilities he has to stay away from and he has to avoid, he wouldn't manage to do that and it wouldn't work.
How's that going to sound?
Sorry, hopefully it doesn't sound good.
So can we go into teammates now?
Yeah.
So
I don't know, Andrew, you have the notes there.
I do have the notes.
No, you tell
me. I was wondering if you had anything else to say.
Too enthralled by my
anyway,
wondrous
so
voice.
Under teammates, basically this is considering we've already talked about you as a champion, your strength, your zones, your abilities. Now we talked about the enemy champions, their strength, their zones, their abilities. Now we think about what about your teammates? And, your natural inclination in solo queue is, I don't trust my teammates. I'm out here on my own. I'm a lone wolf, right? I got to win this game. I got to carry because you're the carry. I can't rely on these people. Last time I relied on someone, you know how much LP I lost? Yeah, we all know. You've told us so many times. So fight your teammates.
Yeah. So,
but someone to consider as a carry would probably be your peel. Who's your peel? Usually it's going to be a support. You imagine something like, it seems a bit outdated nowadays to talk about Alistair support or Soraka support, and really all nowadays your support's going to be fucking MF or like goddamn Malzahar
Zyra or
Malzahar.
Malzahar, yeah.
But either way, you're going to be considering who your support is. It could also be probably your tank. It could be your top lane. It could be jungler. Probably not the other carry. But you're looking at your team. You're looking at what they can do for you. So something like an Alistair. You have to consider, well, I've got an Alistair next to me, and they've got a Zed up there. I know what Zed's zone is. I know he can reach me with a W ult from here. But I've got an Alistair right next to me. I'm Ezreal, right? If the Zed jumps on me, I just E back into my team, Alistair knocks Zed up, and we all kill Zed. Therefore, Zed's zone has been neutralized by the fact that we've got Alistair in this zone. And that's useful. That's why it's great having an Alistair. Sure, yeah, you can't rely on your teammates, whatever. But you can reasonably expect the Alistair standing next to you to be able to pull. Is it pull or knock up? I don't play Alistair.
Yeah.
To be able to pull.
Headbutt is knock away.
Yeah,
pull is knock up.
And be able to pull the Zed that jumps on you. That's reasonable to expect.
Yeah, and so again, as we've talked about zones of kind of threat and varying levels of threat, as we've said, like Malphite Ultimate is definitely a lot more threatening from the enemy team than MF, Let It Rain, or whatever, Olaf Q. Those aren't particularly threatening. They are threats, and if you're in a mobile champion, you don't want to be hit by an Olaf Q. But certainly, first of all, just in terms of the enemy champion, you have to adapt to different threat levels. So too do your team have different threat levels. And again, this is the whole idea of why your tanks should be in front of your carries, because they create a zone of threat and a zone of CC that the opposing champions, even if they could maybe reach you by using all their movement abilities, your tanks will disrupt them. Your tanks will if they get on you, will CC them. And this is all like a matter of the fact that just as they have all these red circles that are moving around on the map, so too do your team have all these red circles that are moving around. And you need to be, just as you need to be aware of their team and their team circles and their team's cooldowns, so too do you need to be aware of your team's cooldowns and your team zones. So if you have a Malzahar, sitting near the Malzahar where they have one diver is an excellent idea, because your Malzahar provides this red circle of ultimate, Malzahar ultimate. And so if their Zed dives you and he doesn't have QSS, Malzahar would just ultimate die. And so you can play up on that. You can play more aggressively. Maybe you can even enter their zones on the basis that your team's red circles are providing, a threatening protection to an extent. So again, if you have an Alistair, but so too does this kind of filter into the idea that you really do need to be aware of where your champions are, though, throughout the fight. So often enough, you'll see like in a game where there are, let's say, you're an AD carry, and I don't know, you have 4 other random champions on your team. A couple of them are bruisers or divers. And you have an Alistair support. Okay, Alistair is a great example of a real PD support who can also go aggressive. And let's say Alistair just gets an absolutely top-notch 4-man pulverize on the enemy team. And then your team is going to starts to kind of engage on them. They start to use their movement abilities and stuff. And so you're like, hell yeah, I need to stay near my Alistair. Alistair is my support. Our team's going in. And you tumble forward as Vayne. Now, maybe Alistair did pulverize Zed. Maybe he didn't. Zed is now not CC'd anymore, and Zed ults you and kills you instantly because you've already used your dash, your Vayne, you die. So this is a classic example of you not respecting the enemy team's zones and not respecting your team's zones, because Alistair no longer has that pulverize headbutt threat. Your team, Alistair's not with you, and he just doesn't have the cooldowns regardless. So you sitting on top of the Alistair in the middle of the team fight isn't going to protect you, and you being like, oh, Alistair, why didn't you peel me? You dive the enemy team, isn't doing anything for you. Alistair made a good play. Maybe he didn't make a good play. Maybe he's suicided. Regardless, you shouldn't base your plays off like, I need to stay near him all the time. I am a robot. You need to identify at that point that, no, I need to stay all the way back here until my team are fully engaged, at which point I can go in. And at which point maybe Zed uses his ultimate, or at which point maybe Malphite uses his ultimate. But you can still sit back. And you see this in pro play and stuff, where, let's say, your Malphite gets a great engage. And let's say the team are all brawling, but the AD carry, Jinx or whatever, is just still sitting all the way back because she just can't walk up because they have a Zed, they have a Katarina, they have whatever, an assassin that can one-shot her. And so she just sits back, then she throws out her ultimate maybe, and then she gets a kill. And then she starts going because she knows that her movement speed combined with maybe the cooldowns that they've used, combines with maybe the cooldowns that her team now have up again, are all combining to let her maybe enter their zones and really use their abilities to great effect. And that's really just an understanding that while your team do have zones, they're not constant. They're ever changing, just as their teams constant, like time, like moods are ever changing and constantly moving with the wind. You should just understand that those are constantly going to be affecting how you play and how you position as an AP or an AD carry.
Another thing to consider under teammates is not to make plays based on whether or not your teammates are going to blame you. So being that jinx, not jumping straight in, not having the discipline not to run into that Z-ult, not to run into that Ash ult that's going to fly out and stun you so they can all just kill you instantly. Having that discipline, knowing that would be a bad idea, that might make you look like an idiot to this extremely tilted Alistair who's kind of been flaming all game. That might make, what if that makes Alistair AFK or something, right? That's pretty scary. So you want to kind of please them all the time, but you have to just be confident of the fact that you're making the correct play according to what you think is going to give you the highest chance of winning. You shouldn't be making these plays based on what will make you look macho enough that, you'll be able to get off the hook that I did my job, sort of thing. You can look like a scared little boy, and you can look like you never really got involved in the fight, and maybe you didn't get involved enough, but you can learn from that yourself. You can look the replay yourself, and you can learn, was that correct or was that not correct? What you shouldn't be doing is trying to rely on the approval from your teammates in the moment when a lot of people are tilted, a lot of people are angry.
Pinging, help, when he's 1v5.
You need to make your own decisions based on what you think is correct, not based on what you think the really tilted teammates. And that sounds kind of like common sense, but I think a lot of the time you feel that pressure in the moment to do what they say. Like when I don't play jungler much, but whenever I do play jungler, I get way too affected by teammates pinging me to gank lanes. And I'm like, I know it's not just, there's a reason I'm not near that lane. It's because I know it's not going to, they ping me 4 times, like, I'll try it and then it'll waste lots of time. So you have to learn not to fall for that pressure. Just know to make your own correct decisions, even if you end up looking stupid.
Specifically related to that, actually, that's also kind of related to don't make mistakes based on your allies' mistakes, because those are those are entirely your fault, as much as if your allies weren't making any mistakes at all. And actually, specifically regard to that and on feeling like pressure and stuff, it's actually partly why when I used to play a lot of Rengar jungle last season, I didn't actually like playing or pre-mating with random people in ranked very much, because I always felt like I had a pressure, or like there was like a something there that was forcing me to gank them more, or whenever they pinged help, I always felt like there was more pressure on me to gank them.
Doesn't happen with me.
And I played a real kind of like farm heavy, real like gold kind of real carry role as a Rengar, where I just kind of power farmed. I just took random waves from people, and I was real great. Well, no, I didn't just steal waves. I mean, I help people push. I just take so many waves from you, but. Yeah, and it really snowballed the game for me, and it worked really well. And so when I let that interfere, when I let other players' pressure interfere with my game plan, and you can kind of think about this in relation to any sort of advice you give. When I let other people pressuring me and other people, making bad calls, pressure me into making bad calls myself, it never worked out well, and that's kind of very related. And I do think that transitions fairly well, just talking about ally teams and movement and stuff.
Never be altruistic.
Onto our last topic, which is never be nice to
people. So general life advice.
Yeah. So onto the last topic, or not the last section, but onto the next section, which is basically
dodging.
And dodging kind of takes into account all the different things related to kind of when you can enter a dangerous zone and when you have to enter a dangerous zone. Because again, we can talk about like Malphite does ultimate. Maybe that's their only dangerous zone. Maybe there are 5 melees. And they all have no CC, and they all have no damaging abilities, but they have a Malphite ultimate who was really fed. So, as an AD carry, should you, for the entire duration of the fight, if he doesn't use his ultimate, just sit back and respect that? Or should you go, okay, I have to do something here. I have to enter that zone of danger to do damage, and I need to dodge it. I need to outplay it. I need to do something. And this is kind of where mechanics can really help, and this is something that you're going to need to do all the time, because we've already talked about these zones, but these zones aren't concrete. These zones aren't like defining absolute circles that you just can't enter. Sometimes you do need to enter the range of a Syndra stun, because Syndra stun is crazy range, and if you sit back for the entire game based on the fact that she could hit with an E, you're not going to get anything done. So often enough you're going to have to go, no, I'm going to have to bite the bullet, I'm going to have to enter that range, I'm going to have to rely on myself to be able to dodge that. And actually, all of you might be going, well, obviously I'm going to dodge the Syndra ultimate, or the Syndra E where she uses it. Obviously I'm going to dodge the Thresh hook, the Blitzcrank hook. But the reason why we're talking about this here is because actually understanding what the zones are and what the abilities are that you're going to have to dodge when you enter those zones is absolutely vital to dodging them. Because like, okay, so we were talking about this before in the free show, and Andrew came up with the idea that like, let's say you're bot lane, and into the lane walks a grey blob that just has no defining features of the champion, and it's just walking towards you, and you're like, what do I? And you start walking away, and then boom, a thresh hook hits you, and you're like, whoa, what? And he pulls you in, and he kills you. And you were like, but I couldn't. And again, this is like relation to how tunneling will affect you in team fights and stuff, and not being aware of all the different sounds.
Explain the analogy before you continue.
Okay, yeah. So that obviously explains exactly what I was saying. So you know to dodge a thresh hook in lane because you expect him to hook you. You know what the animation looks like, but you can't just react so quickly out of the corner of your eye to that animation that you can adapt your play. So if you go into a team fight so knowing, okay, big zones are Blitzcrank hook, are Malphite ult, are Syndra stun. Those are the three things I can do. Okay, Malphite's ultimate. Now there's two zones I need to be focusing on. I have to enter the fight. I just have to do it. My team are losing it otherwise. I need to do DPS. So you enter the fight as Vayne. You're auto-attacking. I'm going to save my Q because I want to dodge those two skill shots. Oh, Syndra ults. Oh, I dodge it. I'm still going. Oh, and you sit, let's say, behind. You can even use allied champions to block often zones because they have their own zone. And maybe a zone is completely linear and they can't go around you or whatever, and it's not a point and click ability. So these are examples where you identify the zone, and identifying the zone is absolutely key, and that enables you to enter that zone and dodge, basically just dodge the ability. And
what matters here is it's going to be affected significantly by the range and zone of your own champion, because if you're playing a Lux, you're not going to being able to dodge skill shots isn't going to be as significant a part of your team fighting repertoire as if you're playing Cassiopeia or if you're playing Ryze, because you're playing a much shorter range DPS champion. Cassiopeia in particular, she gets all this movement speed. You need to be able to enter the thick of things. You need to be able to rely on the movement speed and your ability to dodge skill shots. And obviously this is a much more raw mechanical thing that we usually talk about in this show, because we can't really give you the ability to dodge through your ears or through your eyes. Again, give that to you. That is much more of a raw mechanical ability. It's not as cerebral as the idea of positioning. But there is a way to practice it, and what's coming out soon is going to be the practice tool.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's one way of doing it. You go into that with your mate, get them to pick something like Thresh, walk forward.
Keep throwing out Thresh cues at you.
Keep trying to dodge each other, keep trying to outplay each other. Over time you'll develop some sort of muscle memory. But it's the sort of thing you learn over time. But what we're kind of saying here is about the mental aspect of this dodging. It's about seeing before you go into a fight, well, they have this. That's going to make you better capable of doing it. When you're playing Cassiopeia into this team fight, to know that, well, I can get hit by this brand stun, and that's going to result in me dying instantly. Yeah. Or I can get hit by this, Ivern Q or something. That's going to result in me dying instantly. You've got to identify these danger zones in the team fight. You're going to have to enter them anyway. You're Cassiopeia, you're that short range.
That's why Cassiopeias take Ghost all the time. That's why Ryzes take Ghost all the time. This is basically people identifying before the game that, they have abilities that I need to dodge because they're always going to be longer range than me if I'm Ryze. They're always going to have CC at that range if I'm Ryze. So I just need to have that added movement speed bonus to be able to dodge those abilities. And that's just fundamental. You're always going to need to. And again, identifying the different zones as well. When you go into range of an opposing champion, you're not necessarily stepping inside all their zones. Maybe their Malphite's even further back. Maybe their Syndra is even further back. And maybe you only need to enter one person's zone. And so, again, just understanding the different zones that you're entering and the damaging abilities and the danger of those zones. You might just enter, I don't know, what's a champion that doesn't have, Soraka. Soraka doesn't have a danger zone or enter. If she hits you with Q, it doesn't matter. If she hits you with auto attack, it doesn't matter. Those are not zones you need to be scared of. Those are very light yellow zones. But when you enter a Malphite zone or a Malzahar zone, that's dark red. Very, very unlikely that you want to enter that because it's very difficult to, let's say, dodge or outplay a Malzahar ultimate or again, even a Syndra ultimate. They don't even need to be CC abilities. They can just be damage abilities. If it's a fed Syndra, again, people are always like, oh, she outplayed me today. Oh, I got outplayed when she throws ultimate at you without hitting you with a single other ability.
I hate Syndra so
Often
much.
enough, you just need to be like, I can't enter the zone. It doesn't matter what I do. There's nothing I can do about that. So these are just an ability to outplay is entirely influenced by your ability to identify the things you need to outplay. People don't just react instantly to random flashes of light that are being thrown at them. They understand what's going to be thrown at them in the first place.
So moving towards wrapping this up now. I think there's probably two groups of people watching this. I think the first half are saying, this is really obvious. I know that when I'm playing AD carry that I'm going to have to dodge stuff. I know when playing not to move into the things. I know how to do that, guys. What a waste of an hour. I think the other half are going to, their heads are
They've
swimming.
watched it for an hour still.
Yeah, fair play to you. The other half are, their heads are swimming. They're like, God, zones, I'm moving into them. My teammates' zones, my zones, but I'm moving this way, but I've got different zones, but they've all got different zones. How am I possibly going to figure all this out? And you know what's going to happen after you've listened to this episode? You're going to come to your next team fight and you're probably going to tunnel and you're going to die. And that's grand. Because that is going to happen. Because what we're talking about here is we're laying the groundwork and we're saying the general base theory for probably the majority of your AD carry mechanics or your carry mechanics in a game. Like, it's a really difficult skill. This one episode isn't going to be able to teach you how to do it.
I'm awful at it. This is literally my fundamental flaw in League of Legends is an ability to not tunnel, an ability to continually have this kind of side awareness of all these different abilities and all these different zones. It's just awful, terrible in teamfights.
So if it seems like common sense, that's because this is kind of the base theory for how to position. And if it seems like it's really, really complicated and really difficult, it's because it's kind of an eternally difficult and constantly changing issue that you're never going to be perfect at. You see people in LCS still make positioning mistakes. Professional AD carry players who constantly make several positioning mistakes in the team fight. Like, this is probably, I wouldn't say, I'm not going to try to rank them, but one of the most difficult skills as a carry player, an AD carry player in particular. Yeah. So this is extremely difficult to do, but it's about taking this theory and about having it in your head, and about after you lose a team fight to think, well, why did I die that team fight? And about after you lose a game, think, well, how did I do in team fights this game? Slowly over time, getting this, keeping it in your head, integrating it into your game, slowly kind of improving your team fighting, considering these things, always being considering zones, your own abilities, your allies' abilities, your enemies' abilities. It's an eternally difficult problem, and we're trying to set you the groundwork so you can kind of use that to improve your own team fighting then.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, regardless of which person you are, whether you're the person who's saying, this is too much, I can't take it all in, or whether you're the person who's saying, dude, please, zones, come on. Like,
surf away.
I guarantee that whichever person you are, you're not doing this. You're not doing this. You're not aware to the full extent of every single thing. I don't think anyone truly is aware of every single ability and every single zone that each player has and each champion has on either team. This is always something you can get better at. And regardless of who you are, I guarantee you're not even doing it to 10% of what you should be doing it. Because I think 99% of players up until Masters level tunnel ridiculously in team fights. Just genuine. I think this is one of the things that's done the worst at lower elo, where they just tunnel on the nearest champion and use their abilities on the nearest champion. Maybe before a team fight starts, they think a little bit, but then when the team fight actually begins, it's just like tunnel. And so again, as Andrew said, we can't this isn't just you're not gonna go into a team fight for both people. You're not going to go into a team fight and read through all this information as you're going into it. But it's all about a matter of building up this awareness and building up a habit of thinking about this. So when you go into a team fight, again, when you talk about different ways to improve, we've talked about different ways to improve about looking at replays, doing other stuff. I think this is something that maybe you could even just have a little sticky note on your desk, have a little sticky note maybe on the top of your computer, and just write on it zones even. Just write zones. And then before a team fight starts, look up zones. Just have a quick think about the different stuff as you're kind of moving around, as you're clicking. And then as the team fight goes on, just try to keep that in mind. And let's say, end of the game, you go, oh, you look up, see the sticky, oh, I didn't think about that at all. What killed me in that last team fight? Or oh, I didn't think about it at all after the team fight. What killed me there? Look at the death recap. Oh God, I got hit by all those abilities. What the hell? I didn't even think all those champions were on their team. This is all something that just you build up by thinking about. And just by constantly thinking about it, whether or not you're actively making a real effort during the team fight to think about it, you'll instinctively, if you think about the 5 abilities they have during the team fight, without even thinking about it, you're going to naturally and consciously identify when those abilities hit you. And then as you continuously look back and go, ooh, didn't do that, ooh, did do that, ooh, didn't do that, it'll really improve. And I think it's a super important ability.
So if you can utilize notepad theory, you can fully implement zone theory, and then you can really just kind of use all of Owen's kind of brain power and just plug it straight into your game. So we've got to conclude that for this week.
Yeah, so that'll conclude our topic for this week. I hope you took something from it. I definitely think it's something, again, we always talk about stuff in the Powder Keg podcast, and it's really hard for us as well to implement all this stuff. But just, again, try to do what we said. It'll definitely help you improve.
We put our pants on one leg at a time, just like you guys. So a couple of shout outs. So we're on Twitter. Please follow us on Twitter. Twitter.com/powderkeg. What are we? Powderkegcast. We're going to be posting us on Reddit, /Summoner and /League of Legends. Any comments, any upvotes, everything much appreciated. We're on Gmail now. The powderkegpodcast@gmail.com.
So you can Gmail us any replays, anything you want us to check out.
Questions.
We're going back to college soon, but might have a chance to look at it. It's not too busy at the moment, so definitely do that to us.
This is because I'm on YouTube, so please comment, like, and subscribe. everything, so much appreciated. We're on SoundCloud, follow us on SoundCloud. If you want to listen there, just the full audio version, if that's what you're listening to right now. And we're on iTunes, which means we're on all podcasting apps. And also what would be hugely appreciated would be a 5-star review on iTunes. Best way to help us get the pod out there, and we will shout you out on the next episode if you do.
So until the next episode, thanks very much for listening and watching, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Bye.